Hi everyone. I hope you all have seen my previous videos about semaphores. So in today's class, we will see about that last classic problem of synchronization, which is your dining philosopher's problem. So before going into dining philosopher's problem, that is actually solved by using semaphores. So we should actually know, I hope you would have seen the videos, just a recap of what is semaphore, we will see now, and then we'll move on to that topic. So semaphore is nothing but it's basically a process synchronization tool wherein many students usually get confused whether it is a hardware construct or a software construct. But actually semaphore is just a simple integer variable. But what differentiates a semaphore from a normal integer variable is you cannot access it directly. You can access it only by using two operations called as wait and signal operation. So any solution to the semaphores are actually used as a solution to solve the critical section problem, and any solution to the critical section problem usually looks like this. So here we will have an entry section. Any process before, if it wants to enter the critical section, it will have an entry section, and then in the entry section, it will request for entry to the critical section. The critical section, then it is followed by critical section, and then it is followed by exit section. So in the exit section, it will have some code for the updation operation of the semaphore variable. So this is how any normal solution to the critical section problem actually looks like. And semaphore, as I told you, it's an integer variable which can be accessed only through two standard atomic operations, namely wait and the signal operation. So in wait operation, what we will do is it will decrement the value of the semaphore, and in signal operation, basically it increments the value of the semaphore by 1. Wait means it will reduce the value of the semaphore by 1, and signal means it will increase the value of the semaphore by 1. That is a basic operation. But in wait, we have a check. What we actually do is we check whether the value of the semaphore is equal to 0 or less than 0. In case if the value of the semaphore becomes is actually equal to 0 or less than 0, then the processes are made to execute in the while loop infinitely. They will be busily executing the while loop. They will never be able to come out of this infinite while loop. We have an infinite while loop here because of the semicolon at the end of the while loop. So unless this condition becomes false, any process which comes into the wait operation will never be able to execute in the while loop. So what happens is that if one process is already executing in the critical section, after executing the wait operation, it will never be another process which comes and tries to enter the critical section will never be able to do so because of this while loop. So we ensure that only one process will be in the critical section at any point of time. If any other process tries to enter, it will not be able to enter the critical section. So this is the basic concept of wait operation and signal operation using semaphores. What we are doing in wait is, we will check if the process will check if the value of the semaphore is equal to 0 or less than 0. If that is false, then it will reduce the value of the semaphore by 1. In signal operation, what we will do is it will increase the value of the semaphore by 1. So if we are implementing the mutual exclusion with the semaphores, what we actually try to do is we put this wait operation before the critical section, and then we put the signal operation after the critical section. So whenever any process wants to enter the critical section, it will check the value of the semaphore. Here the semaphore is being indicated as mutex, which means that so mutex is another name used to indicate semaphore, which actually means that semaphores are used as locks for ensuring mutual exclusion. That's why semaphores are also called as mutex. So if any process wants to execute the critical section, it will execute the wait operation on the mutex semaphore, and it will check the value of mutex semaphore, and for any process to enter the critical section, the value of the mutex semaphore has to be greater than 0. So if it is equal to 0 or less than 0, that process will not be able to enter the critical section. Once it finishes its execution in the critical section, it will execute the signal operation, and in this signal operation, what it will do is it will just increase the value of the semaphore, the mutex semaphore. So here, when it enters a critical section, it makes the value of the mutex semaphore to 0 and then enters the critical section. The initial value of mutex semaphore would be 1. When it executes the wait operation, the value of mutex semaphore becomes 0, and then it starts executing in the critical section, and then it executes the signal operation. While executing the signal operation, the value of the mutex semaphore becomes equal to 1. So this is how normally when you implement a solution for the critical section problem using semaphores, how the code will look like. We will put the wait operation before the critical section. Wait operation is supposed to execute before the entry to the critical section, and signal operation is supposed to execute after executing the critical section. Okay, now that is the implementation by using semaphores. And if you see whether that solution satisfies the progress requirement or not, so we saw that, so whether this solution satisfies the mutual exclusion requirement or not. When one process, let's say you have P0, P1, P2. If P0 already enters the critical section, then initial value of mutex semaphore is 1. When it executes the wait operation, the value of the mutex semaphore becomes equal to 0. So P0 enters the critical section. Let's say next process P1 comes. So what happens is that P1 will try to execute the wait operation. But what is there in the code for wait? It checks the value of the mutex semaphore and checks to see if the value of mutex semaphore is equal to 0. Yes, now if P0 is already there in the critical section, the value of mutex is made 0 by P0. So P1 will not be able to enter the critical section. It will be executing in that infinite while loop. So when P1 is executing in the critical section, other P0 is executing in the critical section, other processes will never be able to enter the critical section. So this solution using semaphores ensures mutual exclusion. Let's see if some other, the two more requirements to the critical section problem is progress and bounded waiting. So what we actually do in progress is, if you recall, if you had seen my previous videos about critical section problem, then progress states that only those processes which are interested to enter the critical section should participate in the decision of which process should execute next. So here in the code, the wait of mutex is executed only by that process which wants to enter the critical section. Nobody, the previously executing process is not executing any code to decide which process should enter next. Only those process by its own interest, if it wants to enter the critical section, it is going to execute the wait operation. So progress requirement is also met by using this solution. So that interested process by itself will come and execute the wait operation, and so the progress requirement is met by using this semaphore solution. The third requirement is bounded waiting. Bounded waiting means no process should actually start. Let's say P0 is already executing in the critical section, and P1, P2, P3, they all try to enter the critical section. So at this time, let's say P0 finishes its execution in the critical section, and P1, P2, P3 all are waiting. So in this case, if P0 finishes its execution in the critical section and once again requests entry to the critical section from the operating system, what it will do, as usual, it will try to make the value of the semaphore to 0, and it will try to enter the critical section. Now, there is no guarantee that P0 will not get the chance again. P0 may get the chance or may not get the chance again, depending on the state of the operating system. So here the bounded waiting requirement is not met. In case if P0 gets a second chance, once again P1, P2, and P3, all of them have to be waiting. So finally, sometimes it may also lead to a case when P1, P2, P3, they're all waiting indefinitely, and P0 only gets the chance to execute the critical section. So from this, we can conclude that the bounded waiting requirement is not satisfied by the semaphores. So next topic is about the classic problems of synchronization. So in the classic problems of synchronization are nothing but, as I already told in my previous videos, they are just representations of number of concurrency control problems which occurs in operating system. So in an operating system environment, it's basically a resource manager. So it has to manage several different types of resources in a deadlock free manner. So for that, to simulate that or to represent that, we study these classic problems of synchronization. And there are three basic classic problems of synchronization, namely bounded buffer problem, the readers writers problem, and the third one is the dining philosophers problem. I have already posted videos of the bounded buffer problem and the readers writers problem. Please go through those videos. In today's class, in this video, we will see about the dining philosophers problem. So this dining philosophers problem is the third classic problem of synchronization. What is this problem is that we have a circular table in which we have 5 philosophers who will all be sitting in this fashion. Okay, they all be sitting, and in the middle of the table there is a bowl of rice which is being kept. So what happens is that in between each philosopher, a chopstick is being kept. There is no interaction between these 5 philosophers, and these philosophers spend their lives thinking and eating. Okay, so if at any point of time, if some philosopher gets hungry, he will take up the chopstick on the left hand side and he will take up the chopstick on the right hand side. So he is allowed to take only one chopstick at a time. So he will take the chopstick on the left hand side and he will take the chopstick on the right hand side. First he will pick up the left chopstick, then he will pick up the right chopstick, and then he will start to eat. So for one, let's say this is philosopher 1. If this philosopher 1 has to eat, then his neighbors should be in thinking state. They should not be in eating state, because he will not be able to get the chopsticks. So obviously he cannot, if a philosopher has already started eating, if his neighbor has already started eating, then the philosopher cannot snatch the chopstick from the neighbor. So he has to wait until the neighbor finishes his eating and drops back the chopsticks again, keeps down the chopsticks. So here, okay. So this is about the concept of dining philosophers problem, which I told you now. And so for chopsticks, we have 5 chopsticks kept in the middle of every philosopher. And so the chopstick so we have chopstick of 5 here, and the chopstick is implemented as a semaphore, and all the chopsticks are initially initialized to 1, which means if the value of the chopstick is 1, it means the chopstick is free. And if the value of the chopstick is 0, it means the chopstick is being taken over by some philosopher. Okay, now how to solve this dining philosophers problem? So in order to ensure a deadlock, in order to provide a solution to this dining philosophers problem, 2 things which we can actually do is, instead of allowing all the 5 philosophers to sit at the table at the same time, you can allow at most 4 philosophers to be seated simultaneously at the table. That is one thing. The other thing is, so allow a philosopher to pick up the chopsticks only if both the left chopstick and the right chopstick both are available. Otherwise, you don't allow him to pick up the chopsticks. So by using these 2 constraints, we can provide a solution to the dining philosophers problem. So here we have a shared data, which is nothing but our semaphore. For every, there are 5, which is nothing but our chopsticks. There are 5 chopsticks. So this I will be 5. And all the elements of the chopstick will be initialized to 1. So this is the structure of now this is the solution for our dining philosophers problem using the semaphores. Okay, this is a very commonly asked university exam question. So definitely you will be getting a question on either solving readers writers problem using semaphores, or solving bounded buffer problem using semaphores, or solving dining philosophers problem using semaphores. So here what we do is, this is the structure of any philosopher I. What we actually do is, if any philosopher I, now, so this is a circular table, right? So you can imagine like this. You have 5 philosophers, and that is the chopsticks is being implemented as an array. So we take the index starting from 0. So if we have 5 philosophers, we take it as P0, P1, P2, P3, and P4. And the chopsticks as 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, the chopstick in between, the chopstick to the left of philosopher 0 is 0, and the chopstick to the right of philosopher 0 is 1. Similarly, the chopstick to the left of philosopher 4 is 4, and the chopstick to the right of philosopher 4 is 0. So, if a philosopher wants to eat, what he will do is he will execute the weight operation on chopstick of I. He will execute the weight operation on his left chopstick, and he will execute the weight operation on his right chopstick. Let's say if it is philosopher P0, then when he executes the weight operation on, he will execute the weight operation on chopstick of 0, and he will execute the weight operation on chopstick of I plus 1 mod 5. What is I plus 1 mod 5? 0 plus 1 mod 5. So 1 mod 5 will be 1. So he tries to grab the left, philosopher P0 tries to grab the left chopstick, and then he tries to grab the right chopstick. So what will weight operation do on a semaphore? It will check the value of the semaphore. If it is 0, that will be looping continuously in the while loop. If it is not 0, if it is greater than 0, then it will come out of the wire. It will decrement the value of the semaphore. So if the value of chopstick is 1, that philosopher will make the value of chopstick to 0, that particular chopstick to 0. Next, he will try to grab the right chopstick. Again, if the right chopstick is available, then the value of right chopstick will be equal to 1. So he will try to grab the chopstick by decrementing the value of the chopstick semaphore, and make it to 0. Okay, so after grabbing both the left chopstick and the right chopstick, philosopher enters into the eating state. So after finishing eating, he will execute the signal operation on the left chopstick and the right chopstick. When he executes the signal operation on the left chopstick and the right chopstick, the value of that particular chopsticks becomes equal to 1. Okay. Why we are doing mod 5 here is that, suppose if it's the last process. So for the last process, the left chopstick will be 4. For process P4, the left chopstick will be 4 and the right chopstick is 0. So if it is for process P4, 4 plus 1 mod 5, 5 mod 5 will be 0. So to get the right chopstick value, since it's a circular array type, they are also seated in a circular table. The right chopstick for philosopher P4 will be 0. So to get 0, we have I plus 1 mod 5 here. So after finishing the eating, the philosopher has to put back the chopsticks again. So he executes the signal operation on the left chopstick and the right chopstick. So what happens is the value of those left and right chopsticks again becomes 1, so that if any other philosopher wants to eat, then he can do so. So after dropping down the chopsticks, philosopher once again goes back to the thinking state. Now this is your solution to the dining philosopher's problem. So by using semaphores, the philosopher will just execute the weight operation on the right chopstick and the weight operation on the left chopstick. Weight operation on the left chopstick and then the right chopstick. Similarly, he will execute, after finishing eating, he will execute the signal operation on the left chopstick, and then he will execute the signal operation on the right chopstick. So the problem with this algorithm is it may actually lead to a deadlock. Now, can anybody tell me how the solution will lead to a deadlock? Okay, what will happen is, so if all the philosophers, yes, so if all the philosophers, many of you have answered correctly. So if all the philosophers grab their left chopsticks, all the 5 philosophers grab their left, they get hungry simultaneously all at the same time, and they will first try to grab their left chopsticks, right? They all grab their left chopsticks. and then they all will try to next grab their right chopsticks, but it will not be available, but because it's being held by the neighbor philosopher. So in this case, what happens is that it will lead to a deadlock. This is the situation in which it will lead to a deadlock. So this solution is not free from deadlocks. It actually leads to a deadlock. But any satisfactory solution, so solution which is implemented for the dining philosopher's problem using semaphores is not free from deadlocks, but any satisfactory solution should be free from deadlocks as well as from starvation. So one way to handle deadlocks is we can actually provide an asymmetric solution. In asymmetric solution, what we actually do is we can actually, instead of allowing all the philosophers to pick up left chopstick and then the right chopstick, if it is an odd numbered philosopher, you make him to pick up the left chopstick and then the right chopstick. And if it is an even numbered philosopher, you make him to pick up the right chopstick and then the left chopstick. So instead, by providing an asymmetric solution here, we can actually allow deadlock, we can actually provide for deadlock prevention. Okay, but the problem which actually occurs with the semaphores is that so far we have seen what is semaphore, and we have seen the classic problems of synchronization. But the problems which usually occurs when you use semaphores is for every shared data, you have to implement a semaphore. For every implementation of semaphore, you have to execute wait operation on the semaphore and signal operation on the semaphore. In case if you have too many shared data, then you will have too many semaphores in the program, and managing too much of code is extremely difficult. And due to some programming error, actually the correct use of semaphore is you have to execute the wait operation before entering the critical section, and the process has to execute the signal operation after coming out of the critical section. But in case if due to some programming error, let's say it happens like this, instead of putting wait before critical section and signal after critical section, if the programmer puts signal before the critical section and wait after the critical section, what happens in the first case is all the philosophers will be able to enter the critical section, because signal is put in the beginning, right? So if the value of mutex semaphore is not equal to 0, anybody can enter the critical section. So all philosophers may end up in the critical section simultaneously at the same time, and so it will not guarantee mutual exclusion. The second problem is, instead of putting a signal operation after the critical section, if the programmer due to some error, if he puts a wait operation after the critical section, what happens is that that only one process will be there. That process which has finished its execution has decremented the value of the mutex instead of increasing the value of the mutex. So what happens is no other process will be able to enter the critical section after that current process completes. So because of this, all processes in the system might be waiting for the semaphore and they will never be able to get the semaphore. And so it actually leads to a deadlock. Another problem is this, if the programmer forgets to put the wait of the semaphore or the signal of the semaphore. In this case also deadlock and starvation are possible. So because of these large number of problems which usually happens with semaphores, we actually go to the next topic of monitors. Okay, we saw what is dining philosopher's problem. We saw a solution to the dining philosopher's problem, but we also saw that when it is implemented using semaphores, we are not able to provide a deadlock free solution. So in order to, and semaphores also has a lot of issues in its implementation. So in order to provide a deadlock-free solution to many common classic problems of synchronization, the concept of monitors has been proposed. So in this monitors concept, what we actually do is, now what is this monitor is? Monitor is basically a high-level abstraction concept which is used to provide process synchronization. So here what we actually do is, how we can define a monitor is basically an abstract data type. It's an abstract data type which consists of private data and public procedures which can operate on the data. Okay, monitor is basically an abstract data type which consists of private data, that is the shared variables which the processors wants to access will be put inside the monitor as private data, and it consists of public methods to operate on the data. So if any process wants to access that private shared variable, it cannot do it directly. It can access only through the public procedures. And another important restriction in monitors is only one process can be inside the monitor at any point of time. So this is the conceptual view of monitors. So in this conceptual view of monitors, this is your monitor. So in this monitor, this A, B, and C represents the shared data, and these are all the procedures inside the monitor. These are all the public procedures, and you have a queue of processes here: P1, P2, and P3. So if any process, let's say process P1 wants to access shared data variable A, B, and C are variables. Okay. If P1 wants to access the shared variable A, then it can access only, first it has to gain access to the monitor, and after getting access to the monitor, P1 can access A only through the procedure, only through the public procedures. P1 cannot access the shared data A directly. Okay. Here A, B, and C, they are all private data. You can imagine it like the object-oriented programming concept of our Java. You will have private variables and you can have some methods to operate on that private variables. Similarly, here you have private shared data, and you can allow processes to access the shared data, but all processes cannot enter the monitor at the same time. And if a process wants to access the shared variable, it can do so only by using the public procedure. So A, B, and C are local variables which can be accessed only by using the public procedures. And these procedures also can access only these local variables. They cannot access any variable declared outside the monitor. So that is about the conceptual view of monitors. And this is the syntactic view of a monitor. So one common question which is asked in the examination is explain the syntax and schematic view of monitors. This is the syntax view of monitor. Any monitor is declared by using the monitor keyword and monitor construct followed by monitor name. And inside the monitor, you will have a set of shared variable declarations. These shared variables are the shared data which is going to be shared among many processes. And this is actually followed by a set of procedures. Through these procedures only we can access the shared variables, and that is again followed by, that may actually be followed by some initialization code where we can actually initialize the variables. Okay, this is the syntactic view of a monitor. Syntactic view of a monitor consists of private data, private variables, procedures, and the initialization code declared inside the monitor. Now this is the schematic view of a monitor. This is your monitor and this is your waiting queue where processes which are all waiting for the monitor are put in a queue. So here we have a set of monitor means I told you will have a set of procedures, and these are all the procedures. You have a set of shared data and the procedures will be accessing the shared data. You may also have some initialization code here. So you have some shared data and the procedures which can access that shared data, and you have some initialization code where we can initialize this shared variables. This is your schematic view of the monitor. And if any process wants to access the monitor, and if some other process is already executing inside the monitor, then it will be put into a queue. This is the key. Entry queue is the queue of all the processes which are waiting for entry to the monitor, because only one monitor can access, only one process can access the monitor at any point of time. And here you can see that how it differs from the concept of a semaphore. In semaphore, we'll have one variable, and to access that one shared data, we will have wait operation and the signal operation. But in monitor, we put all the shared data inside the monitor, and if any process wants to access the shared data, it has to come inside the monitor and access it only by using the procedure. Okay, note that one important point which you have to keep in mind is, if you have two processes P and Q, P may be waiting for some, let's say you may have two shared data called X and Y. So process P may be waiting for shared data X and process Q may be waiting for another shared data Y. Okay, conceptually they need not be disallowed from entering the monitor, but according to the concept of monitor, only one process can be inside the monitor. So even though P and Q are operating on two different shared data, both cannot be inside the monitor at the same time. Okay, so I told you this is the concept of a monitor where we put in all the shared data inside the monitor. So, but we are going to have different variables, different shared data. Let's say you may have three variables called X, Y, and Z, which are all shared among the, which may all be shared among different processes. So in this case, what happens is that this basic synchronization mechanism of a monitor is not sufficient to provide full synchronization. So for that reason, we have a programmer can define additional variables of type called as condition. Okay, using the condition construct, a programmer can actually define additional synchronization constructs. So how? So here, if you have two shared data called X and Y, we will define a condition construct called X and Y. Okay, if some process wants to access the shared data X, it will do so by executing X dot wait of and X dot signal of. If some process wants to access the shared data Y, it will do so by executing Y dot wait of and Y dot signal of. Okay, depending on, so here you have different, more than one shared data. So for every shared data, we need to have wait and signal on the shared data. So for that reason, we are having separate wait and signal for each variable, and each such shared data is defined by using the condition construct. But what happens by the X dot wait of or X dot signal of is a little bit different from the concept of a semaphore. X dot wait of means we are executing wait operation on the condition variable X. So executing wait operation on the condition variable X, whenever a process executes wait operation on the condition variable X, the process which is invoking X dot wait of will be suspended. Okay, whenever a process executes wait operation on the condition variable X, the process which invokes wait will be suspended and it will be put into a queue. Whenever a process executes X dot signal off, it will resume the execution of one suspended process. Okay, whenever a process executes X dot wait off, that process which invokes X dot wait off, I'm telling about condition variables. Okay, here X and Y are defined as condition variables, and so normally in semaphores, wait off will reduce the value of the semaphore by 1 and signal off will increase the value of the semaphore by 1. But in condition variables of monitors, X dot wait off will block the process which is invoking it. It will suspend its execution, and X dot signal off will resume the execution of one suspended process. So this shows the schematic view of a monitor with condition variables. Okay, schematic view of a monitor with condition variables. So previously, in the previous schematic view, we had operations, that is nothing but your procedures, and then the initialization code, and then the shared data. But shared data can be more than one, right? So we have a queue for every condition variable here. For if you have two shared data called X and Y, there will be a set of processes waiting for condition variable X, and there will be a set of processes waiting for condition variable Y. There will be a set of processes waiting to get access to the monitor as a whole. There will be a set of processes waiting to get access to the monitor. This is the entry queue of the set of processes waiting for entry to the monitor, and this is the queue of each individual processes waiting for entry to the shared data, to every separate shared data. So this is a schematic view of a monitor which has more than one condition variable. So this is the, so here what happens is that, let's say you have two processes P and Q. Okay, P is currently executing inside the monitor. And let's say you have another process Q which is waiting for condition variable X. If the process P invokes the X dot signal off, let's say if the process P which is currently executing inside the monitor invokes X dot signal off, then what happens conceptually? Any other process which has been suspended and waiting for the condition variable X should be able to resume its execution. Let's say you have the another process Q which is waiting outside the monitor with x dot wait of. Okay, you have one process P which is already there inside the monitor and it executes x dot signal off. You have another process Q which executes x dot wait of, which is waiting for the condition variable x. So now what happens, but P and Q are two different processes and they both cannot be inside the monitor at the same time, right? So even though P finished its execution with x, P is not going to use the condition variable x and Q is only going to use the condition variable x after coming inside the monitor. So conceptually, P and Q can continue their execution at the same time. But according to the concept of a monitor, this P and Q cannot be inside the monitor at the same time. So due to that reason, what happens is that there are two choices here. Okay, let's say if P issues x dot signal off and Q has been waiting for the condition variable x, then what happens here, whether to allow Q and P should come out or whether Q will wait until P comes out. So that is one question here. So what are the options here is there are two options. One is signal and wait. Signal and wait means P will allow Q to come inside the monitor and P will wait until Q leaves the monitor or Q starts waiting for some other conditional variable. The other option is signal and continue. Signal and continue means that P has issued x dot signal off, so but Q will not enter the monitor until Q comes. Q will not enter the monitor until P leaves the monitor or P starts waiting for some other conditional variable. So first option P will wait. In the second option Q will wait. So this concept of monitors is being implemented in a language called concurrent Pascal. So in concurrent Pascal, what it will do is, as soon as the process P issues the P dot x dot signal off, P will immediately leave the monitor and Q will immediately resume its execution. So that is followed in the concurrent Pascal language. So now already we saw what is dining philosopher's problem, and we also saw that the solution to the dining philosopher's problem using semaphores was not able to provide a deadlock free solution. So this is a solution to the dining philosopher's problem using monitors, again very important from the examination point of view. This solution is able to ensure a deadlock free solution. Okay, so here what we do is we are implementing a solution by using monitors. As I told you, monitor means it will have some shared data. It will have some procedures with which we can access the shared data. So here we define a monitor called DP, indicating dining philosophers, and we define the state of the philosopher as an enumeration variable. And there are 5 philosophers in the dining philosophers problem. So we define the state to be an array of size 5. And each of these 5 philosophers can be in 3 states, namely thinking state or hungry state or eating state. And then we define a condition variable called self as an array because we have 5 chopsticks. This chopstick is the shared data, no? Right? So to indicate the shared data, we actually define a condition variable. Okay, so we have a condition variable where to denote the chopsticks. We have 5 chopsticks, so it is being declared as an array. The chopsticks have been declared as self, and we have 5 philosophers and 5 chopsticks, and so the array has been initialized to 5. We have, the concept is very simple. So what we do is, if any philosopher wants to go to the eating state, then he will execute the pickup operation. He will invoke the pickup procedure on the monitor, and then he will go to the eating state, and then he will invoke the put down procedure on the monitor. Okay, if any philosopher wants to eat, he will execute the pickup procedure on the monitor, and then he will go to the eating state. After finishing the eating operation, he will execute the put down procedure on the monitor. First execute pickup, then go to eating state, then execute put down. Now let's see what is there in the code for pickup procedure and the code for the put down procedure. Now the code for the pickup procedure looks like this. So initially, before that, let's see the initialization code. This is your initialization code for all the five philosophers. All the five philosophers, the state is initialized to thinking state. So initially, all the philosophers are in thinking state. And then if any philosopher, let's say the first philosopher wants to eat. So what he will do, he will execute the pickup procedure. When he executes the pickup procedure, what will happen is that he will set his state to hungry state, and then he will execute it, and then he will call the test procedure. He will call test of I. So what happens in test of I? In test of I, let's say, imagine the processes, or let's say the philosophers are all seated like this: philosopher 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and chopsticks also will be like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So he has to check the state. If a philosopher wants to go to the eating state, there are three conditions. First thing is, so if a philosopher wants to go to the eating state, first that philosopher has to be in hungry state. So you check whether the state of I of that current philosopher is hungry. And then you check the state of the left philosopher and the state of the right philosopher. I say that the state of the left philosopher is I plus 4 mod 5. Why I plus 4 mod 5? Let's say if it is philosopher 0. The chopstick on the left of philosopher 0 is chopstick 4, right? So 0 plus 4 mod 5 will be 4. Because it's a circular array, so 0 plus the chopstick on the left of philosopher 0 will be 4. So 0 plus 4 mod 5 will be 4. So state of philosopher 4 should not be equal to eating. And the philosopher will check the state of his right philosopher. How will I get the state of my right philosopher? It is I plus 1 mod 5. That is 0 plus 1 mod 5. That is 1 mod 5, which is equal to 1. So every process, if it wants to enter into the eating state, he will check the state of his left philosopher, which is given by state of I plus 4 mod 5. And he will check the state of his right philosopher, which is actually given by I plus 1 mod 5. So I plus 4 mod 5 indicates the state of the left philosopher, and I plus 1 mod 5 indicates the state of the right philosopher. Now we have an AND condition here. So only if all these three conditions are satisfied, then it will execute this loop where the state of the current philosopher is initialized to eating, and then a signal operation is invoked. What will the signal operation on a condition variable do? Self is a condition variable. This signal operation will resume the execution of one blocked process. But initially, if all the processes are in thinking state, no process would be blocked. So here, in case if any process has been blocked, waiting for the chopstick, it will resume uh, the suspended philosopher. So that's why we have self of I dot signal of here. So what will happen? Basically, a philosopher, if he wants to eat, he will set his state to hungry, and then he will execute the test operation. If he is a first philosopher, then he will set in the test operation. What will happen is his state will be set to change to eating. So here we have a if statement here. If the state of the current philosopher, after executing the test function procedure, if the state of the current philosopher is not being changed to eating, then you block that philosopher, blocks itself. That philosopher suspends himself. Then it results in the suspension of that philosopher process. How will he suspend? He will execute self of I dot wait. When he executes self of I dot wait, what happens is that philosopher is suspended, and he will be putting in a waiting queue for that condition variable self. Okay, so after executing the pickup operation, the state of the current philosopher becomes equal to eating. He will go to the eating state, and then after finishing eating, he will execute the put down operation. So what is there in the code for put down? He has put down the chopsticks. So he will change his state to thinking, and then he will execute the test operation on I plus 4 mod 5. and he will execute the test operation on I plus 1 mod 5. So what does I plus 4 mod 5 indicate? Indicates which philosopher? Yes, left philosopher. Okay, state of I. So he will execute the test procedure on the left philosopher. Why? Because in case if the left now he is trying to give the chance to his left philosopher and the right philosopher. So left philosopher, as I told you before, it is indicated by I plus 4 mod 5, and right philosopher is indicated by I plus 1 mod 5. Now left philosopher will check his the philosopher on his left and the philosopher on his right, and if both are not in the eating state, then then the left philosopher will start eating. Test of I plus 1 mod 5 gives a chance to the right philosopher. So if the right philosopher will again check the left of the right philosopher and the right of the right philosopher, and if both are not in the eating state, then that philosopher will start eating. So after the current process finishes its execution, he tries to give a chance to his left philosopher and right philosopher, because they also if they are in hungry state, then they can go to eating state if their neighbors are not eating. So that's why we try to test and give a chance to the left and right philosophers of the current philosopher by executing the test operation. So in this way, we are able to ensure that this solution to the dining philosophers problem using monitors and provides a deadlock free solution, because everybody is being given a chance. When one philosopher finishes his eating state, then he tries to execute the test operation on the left philosopher and the right philosopher, and by that we can ensure that everybody will get a chance to pick up the chopsticks and eat. Every philosopher, after finishing his eating, he gives a chance to the left and the right. So by that, every philosopher will get a chance to pick up the chopsticks and eat, and by that we can ensure that it doesn't result in deadlocks or starvation. So this is the solution to the dining philosophers problem by using monitors. And as I told you, one thing which you have to remember is, in the dining philosopher solution using monitors, we have 4 procedures: pick up, put down, and test, and it will actually execute in this sequence. First he will execute pickup of I. In pickup he will call the test procedure, and then he will eat, and then he will execute put down of I. In put down, again he will call the test procedure and check to see if the left of the current philosopher and the right of the current philosopher wants to eat. If they want to eat, they will again check their left and right, and if the left and right are not in eating state, they will pick up their chopsticks and start to eat in case if they are hungry. So by that we ensure a deadlock and starvation free solution. Now if you want to provide an implementation of monitors by using semaphores, we saw what is semaphores, we saw what is monitors. If you want to provide if you want to implement monitors using semaphores, then how that can be implemented? So here, recall the concept of monitors. Monitors means you're going to have more than one shared data inside the monitor, and every shared data can be accessed only by using the public procedures defined inside the monitor. So, and only one process can be active inside the monitor at any point of time. So to ensure that only one process is active inside the monitor, we have a semaphore called as mutex, which is initialized to 1. Okay, we have a semaphore called mutex to ensure mutually exclusive access inside the monitor for each process. To ensure that only one process is active inside the monitor, we have a semaphore called as mutex. Okay, so every process, as usual, if it wants to enter the monitor, it has to execute wait of mutex, and when it leaves the monitor, it will execute signal of mutex. Okay, so the procedure code will look like this. But here we also have many different condition variables, and we may have processes, as I told you, the P and the Q situation. So you may have 2 processes P and Q. When process P executes X dot signal off, And if process Q is waiting outside the monitor with X dot wait off, then process Q should be allowed to resume its execution. So in that case, process P will be waiting. So such kind of waiting processes will be waiting on another semaphore called as next. Okay, so if you have two processes P and Q, and if process P is wants to give a chance to process Q, so then process P wants to wait, then all such waiting processes will be put on the next semaphore. Next semaphore is used to keep track of all those processes which are waiting, which are being suspended and waiting for the currently executing process to come out of the monitor. So mutex semaphore is initialized to 1 and next semaphore is initialized to 0. And we have a variable called next count, which is initialized to 0. This is used to just keep track of the total number of processes which are suspended and waiting on the next semaphore. Okay. Just because when one process is there inside the monitor executing on one conditional variable, if you have another process outside the monitor which is being suspended and waiting for another conditional variable, such set of processes will be waiting on the next semaphore. And we have a variable called next count to keep track of how many processes are waiting for how many condition variables. Okay, so here the procedure for F will look like this. Every process which if it wants to enter the monitor, it will execute the wait operation on the mutex. This mutex is used for ensuring mutually exclusive access to the monitor. And when it comes out of the monitor, it will execute signal operation on the monitor. But then inside the body of the procedure, we also check if the value of next count is greater than 0. If the value of next count is greater than 0, it means that some process has been suspended and waiting outside the monitor for some condition variable. So in that case, we execute the signal operation on the next semaphore. What does it mean? It will make the value of the next semaphore to 1, which means if some other process wants to enter the monitor, it can do so. If some other suspended process wants to resume its execution, it can do so. Otherwise, if next count is not greater than 0, no process is waiting for entry to the monitor, waiting for any conditional variable. So in that case, it will just execute the signal of mutex so that if any other process wants to enter the monitor, it can do so. So by using this solution, we are able to ensure mutual exclusion within the monitors. So that's all about the concept of what is the schematic view of a monitor, syntactic view of a monitor, and how to implement dining philosopher's problem by using monitors, and how to implement monitors by using the concept of semaphores.